Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is former NFL linebacker and co-founder of athletes.org, Brandon Copeland. Brandon, I've got a lot that I want to get to with you, but let's start with that. This new venture that you have embarked on, athletes.org. It is a free membership organization that's open to all athletes. Reading the Ross Dellinger piece that he wrote on this a few weeks ago, you essentially wanted to create a college version of a players association. So like, what kind of separates this from a true players union?
Yeah, I think that well, one, thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity and platform to speak today. And when it comes to athletes.org, I think that one, obviously, as you look at the college athletic space, in my opinion, and I'm biased, but I think that a lot of administrators and the NCAA will tell you is like revenue sharing is only it's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I think that ultimately athletes need to understand and organize their voice, not even just for collective bargaining and to negotiate and to speak into the future of college athletics, but also because it's just the right thing to do. And building a community and building a place where you can be mentored by alumni athletes from your school. Again, there's just so many benefits to what we've built with athletes.org. But one of those major benefits is the fact that now we can help athletes organize and speak into the future of college athletics. Do you want to be an employee? Do you not? How do you feel about this whole conference realignment thing? How do you feel about flying across the country during the middle of the week when you know you're supposed to be a student first, so to speak? And again, I don't think that we are. I want to be clear that this is an extremely polarizing subject, extremely polarizing topic, like a lot of things in the world. Athletes.org, what we're trying to do is we're not claiming we know the answers. We're just getting the athletes together. And we're doing this in a way that's giving them a lot of value first, so that we can actually have productive conversations and collaborative conversations with those that sit at the collegiate athletics boardroom table.
I think 2020, maybe even more so than NIL itself, kind of set the stage for this, for players to want to have a voice. If you think back to what Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were doing just to try and play football in a safe way during that COVID season, how much do you think that kind of played a part in you guys wanting to have something like this where athletes do feel like they're heard, and it's not just a matter of working through back channels or tweet, throwing something out there on Twitter to start something like this?
Yeah, no, I think that, like you said, 2020, I think it helped speed up a lot of things. And obviously, it's a pandemic. There's a lot of negative things that happened during that time. But I mean, you just look at the world and how it's grown since then in terms of business, in terms of communication, in terms of us being able to sit down and have this conversation like this, right? And even before 2020, I mean, you saw um, athletes have always wanted to have their voice heard, right? It's only become more acceptable over time for you to be able to have a voice and take a stance on certain subjects and issues. And I think that now, when you pour into obviously this particular topic of college athletics and TV contracts and revenue sharing and all those things, right? Like the time is now for college athletes to unify and to again just have their voices heard. I don't think that what we're organizing here is something extremely polarizing. It's just like I think we deserve an opportunity to speak our mind and speak our opinion. And I say we, I even shouldn't say we. This is for athletes, by athletes, and specifically, I'm the old washed NFL player now. I want to make sure that I am handing the ball off to the next generation and leaving them in a much better predicament than I
Yeah.
was.
And for those who don't know, this is a nonprofit organization. So it's
Yeah.
not like this is some like massive scheme to get money out of athletes during NIL. And what are the services that's offered up? And you've talked about financial literacy on Good Morning America, for crying out loud. It's like it's something that obviously you've spent a lot of time digging into as a player now in the space that you're in. but the ability to hire a lawyer pro bono to look over a contract, an NIL contract, is a nice, unique wrinkle that athletes.org is providing. Have you seen horror stories with this like playing out where, man, if you had just hired a lawyer for 5 hours, 6 hours to look over a contract, probably could have avoided something like this?
Yeah, man. And unfortunately, I shouldn't even be laughing thinking about it because I mean, it is truly a horror story. And I think that, when we started athletes.org, yes, there's this opportunity here that is, hey, revenue sharing and being able to help athletes organize their voice and talk through that. But first, let's just give them value, right? Like, let's just create this tool that would have been really beneficial for a younger version of myself to have. As an athlete, and I'll get back to your point here, I promise you, right? But like as an athlete, you have the pressure, and I'll talk about myself from 2013 coming into the NFL as a wide-eyed rookie. You have the pressure of trying to learn a system, be a pro, learn a career, and then everybody also expects you to be some phenomenal business person, right? And to know how to vet people and know who's real and who's fake, right? And while I was fortunate and I've made plenty of mistakes. I've made my own mistakes, right, in business and in judging people and their character. Um, while I was fortunate to have a background of mentors and of relationships from the University of Pennsylvania and interned on Wall Street for multiple years and things of that nature, like how do you digitize that and give that to other people? How do you digitize these relationships and these partners, these connections that want to help people and give it to all athletes at scale? And that's what we've done with athletes.org. And like you said, one of our features is we give all of our athletes access to a pro bono attorney network. And so they get 5 hours of pro bono services for any contract that they want. So whether it's NIL or whether it's them closing on their first home, right? Like whether it's looking at a lease agreement, right? Because yes, we're focused on college athletes, but we call this a locker room for life. It's not once you take that jersey off after your last game, we're going to throw you away and get rid of you. No, you're a part of this locker room for life, and it's just the beginning of your journey because athlete is just a piece of your identity. And so we have free background checks, we have free second medical opinions, we have brand consultants, and all of these people and these partners at some very well-known firms have literally said, hey, this is important enough for us to invest in the development of athletes. So before we ever charge you anything, we're going to give you hours and pour into you because we understand that if we can impact you, then we can impact the world.
Because compliance departments, they can only do so much. There's
Yeah.
only so much that they can sift through. And even though there are programs across the country that have obviously poured resources into being able to try and make sure that their athletes aren't getting screwed, it's nice to be able to have that knowing, hey, this is something where if you are going to be making serious money, not just a couple $100 from a local restaurant or something like that, then you do have means to a resource like that. A horror story with NIL that is pretty well documented at this point, but how familiar are you with the Jaden Rashada situation and the way that played out at Florida?
Pretty familiar, unfortunately.
Yeah. How could athletes.org have maybe allowed him to navigate something like that?
Yeah, so one, when you come into our platform, again, as you mentioned, it's free, but you have a number of features and resources. You have Q&AI, you can ask any question anytime, you have your expert network. We also have an agency and collective registration and verification process. So in the case of like Jaden Rashada, he would have been able to come in to our platform. He would have been able to look up his collective, the Gator Collective at that time, and he would have been able to see information on them and whether they operate at a certain standard. And if they operated at that standard, he would have hopefully, felt comfortable going and doing business with them. And if they weren't in the portal and they hadn't verified themselves, he would have been able to ask more questions and maybe that he would have done it a bit differently. I mean, I think the tragedy in that story is the fact that, athletes right now, because of NIL and because of just where college athletics is as a whole, is you're really going pro earlier. And so unfortunately, when this young man, with me, I'm 18, 19, I was at the University of Pennsylvania. Listen, the Bama of the Ivy League. Let's go ahead and put it out there like
Love
that,
it.
right? Um, but when I was there, I was able to focus on football, and me being able to focus on my craft got me to the NFL. now you're in a place in a situation like this where your mind is turned, you're not focused on what you grew up loving to do. And what effect is that ultimately having on this young man's career? And what we want to be with athletes.org, and similar to the way that you mentioned with the compliance directors, we just want to be a resource. Like, there's only so much that one person or one school can do for all of their athletes. And if we as athletes.org can help you scale that and scale these tools that ultimately protect your athletes, giving them free background checks in their hands, things of that nature, then it in my mind, again, I'm biased, it almost seems like a no-brainer. The final thing I'll say, Connor, we've been extremely collaborative about this thing. This is not Brandon Copeland and the athletes.org team just in a basement together, just creating our own intake forms and verification processes and stuff. We've been collaborating with top agents and administrators around the country and building councils for this. And one thing that one of our agents said is like, sometimes, athletes just make bonehead decisions. You're like, why did you make that decision? Right? Like, what happened? And I'm like, well, that's what you want athletes.org in your athletes' hands for, because sometimes athletes are faced with decisions that they don't feel comfortable going to the compliance director to talk about, or to the AD of a school to talk about, right? Or to an agent. And you want them to have a discreet way where they can get their questions answered by really amazing professionals who are willing to invest in their development. And hopefully that prevents you from ever being able to say, why did that athlete make that bonehead decision, right? That's the goal here, is to cut out the horror stories and to give athletes more agency in the form of their pockets.
Yeah, an unbiased third party. I think everybody wants that in certain elements of their life, to be able to weigh in on important decisions. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're going to be able to provide. What's the future of NIL in the 2020s? Is it simply pay for play with organizations like yours that can protect and perhaps empower student athletes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, who knows, right? Like, who knows? This thing, it could end up, is the moment I think it's going to end up one way, something comes out and a bill comes out, and maybe it could go that way. I think that what we are focused on is it is inevitable that revenue sharing will happen. It will have to happen. This is one of the few businesses in the world where, again, the employees aren't necessarily, or the people that are generating and helping generate the revenue aren't necessarily getting compensated for it, as bumps in everyone's salary continues to rise. Now, what we are doing is we're focusing on just providing value to athletes now, and then also maintaining our flexibility to be able to help guide them into whatever that future looks like, whether it is unionization at some point, or whether it is just creating the chapters, which we've created, to be able to help with the different agreements that may come from the entire revenue sharing model.
Yeah, I think that there are probably a lot of people listening to this going, I'm fatigued on NIL. I'm tired of
Yeah.
hearing about it. It's not something that, like, when I see a headline related to it, I avoid it. And I kind of get it from a fan's perspective. I've been thinking about this for the last couple of years. What should a fan be rooting for with NIL?
Hmm.
Because it's obviously different school to school, but is there a thing overall that, like, big picture, if you see this headline as a fan, you would think, oh, this is good. Like federal legislation. Oh, that's good. Oh, we're actually going to have a breakaway from the NCAA, and there's going to be a separate organization that runs NIL. Like, what's the
Yeah.
best outcome for a fan consuming this sport as it relates to NIL?
Yeah, I can completely understand the exhaustion with the whole NIL mantra. I think that the simplest way to think about NIL is it's just a marketing deal. It's the same marketing deal that your favorite NFL quarterback does. It's the same thing that these college athletes are getting an opportunity to finally do. And I think that, me, right, like, taking away the different titles of things, the legislation and all those things, I think for a fan, you should want to see the athletes on the field winning and incentivized to win the same way they are at the pro level. So when their team goes to March Madness, and when they go to the Elite Eight and the Final Four, right, like, they should win, and that should also affect them financially, the same way it affects the university and the coaches and everyone else. Everyone else gets extensions and parties and celebrations and things of that nature, and the kids, we go back to class. And so I think that the simplest level is you want your athletes to win the same way everyone else is winning.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about your background because some people might be listening to this, wondering what makes you such an authority on such a
Yeah.
topical issue in college sports. You played at Penn, you teach there now in the offseason, which I always think of as the school from Boy Meets World, if we're being 100% honest. Um, but you played 10 years in the NFL. You actually announced
Yeah.
your retirement from the NFL 2 days before athletes.org launched. What did you witness in the NFL when it came to players kind of managing their money, either recklessly or alternatively, the players who were really, really good about budgeting and it kind of made a lasting impact on you?
Yeah, I think that, my biggest goal, to frame it up, 10 years, as you mentioned, undrafted free agent, fired maybe 6 times within my first year in the NFL. So, like, it was always, what can I do? One, the NFL and this whole dream and vision of playing 10 years was like, that was a real big dream, in 2013. But ultimately, it was always like once I got my shot and I got my foothold in the NFL, it was like I need to do enough now that can propel me the rest of my life financially, right? Like, um, unfortunately, I've had teammates, I've had friends, I've had people who've reached out and they're maybe a few months out of the league and they're reaching out asking for help financially. And I know that they've had bigger contracts or a bigger signing bonus or drafted, right? Like, I know that they made more money during their time in the league than I have, right? And while athletes.org is not just about helping you manage your money properly, what I have seen is there's a crazy amount of pressure on you as an athlete, as I was alluding to earlier, to get this right, right? To not mess this up. So you're not talked about negatively in the world. And then when you go home, there's pressure to take care of your community and give back and all these things. And like, so what is the way that we can download all these blueprints from current and former pro athletes to just keep into a locker room that you just give blueprints or what we call playbooks to the next generation? So now you increase the next generation's chance of getting it right. Because if you increase their chance of getting it right, that has generational wealth impacts. They get the chance to take care of their community, they get a chance to take care of their family. And so to get back to the root of your question is I've seen a lot. I've seen it all. I've seen great stories. I've seen terrible ones. One thing I'll call out that always stuck with me in 2015, my teammate Theo Riddick said, "Hey man, like the dream is," his biggest goal at that time was, I just want to, when I leave football, I just want to at least have a year that I don't have to go work and I don't have to do anything, right?" And that sounded a little crazy at that time because I'm like, you make pretty decent amount of money, but having a bunch of people reach out, you realize how hard that actually is. And from the guy who retired, and then 2 days later to launch the company, um, for me, it's not necessarily about the financials at all. It's more about what would be a gift that a younger version of myself would have loved to have had. Because I know that ultimately, if I would have had athletes.org earlier, the contracts would have looked different. Not the on the field contracts, right? Like, but the off the field contracts, the marketing contracts. We've been asking for different things. And again, those small details and decisions are the difference between generational wealth and if I only would have known.
Did Belichick offer you any financial advice during the time you spent in New England?
No, no. Belichick just kept trying to compare my play to Lawrence Taylor in the negative way, and just said, "Why can't you do it like him? Why can't you do it like him?" Hey, Bill. Well, I don't know if you looked at me lately, but I'm not Lawrence Taylor. I'll tell you that much.
That's got to be the absolute worst, though, when you're in a spot like that and you're like, all right, this guy has seen so many great people at the position come before me. And even if you want to get into the Teddy Bruschies of the world and, the Vrabels and guys like that, you come into that spot and you're just like, Yeah, I know I'm going to be up against it every single time. Did he pay you a compliment during your time? I got to imagine there was, and if he
Yeah,
ever did, that would probably stand out more than anything you could possibly hear.
exactly. It's small compliments, right? Like it's a statement, and it's a short statement, monotone. It's it's a smart play, Coach. And it's just move forward, right? Like that's it, and you can take it like you just won a Super Bowl. You take that home to the bank, right?
That's a win. That's a win in
Yeah,
my book. You were with the Lions when Matt Stafford got that $135 million extension.
yeah.
Did you kind of step in and say like, Matt, for the small price of, I don't know, like 500K, whatever, like I can offer you the financial advice needed to turn that into $200 million. You're not dealing with a lot of teammates that have interned on Wall Street. All right, like I can take this to the next level for you.
Oh, yeah, man. I told him. I think he still owes me money. Matter of fact, we need everybody to reach out to Matt and send him a DM and say, I think you still owe Coach a few million. But no, yeah, I've been fortunate to be around some amazing players and amazing teammates and Megatron, Calvin, Matt Stafford, Haloti Nada, Glover Quinn. That locker room, Coach Caldwell, Coach Jim Caldwell. I mean, that locker room was a really special one. I will tell you this: my rookie year, maybe 3 weeks into my stint with the Tennessee Titans at that time, I had a teammate of mine so I used to day trade while playing my rookie year, which is probably why I was on practice squad. I probably should have been focusing a little bit more on the game plans. But came in the locker room. He had saw me in my locker just day trading over a few days. Used to ask a few questions, and then came in the locker room, threw me 20,000 in cash, and said, "Let me see what you do with it." And I was like, "Oh, snap." And at that time, that was the most money I've ever seen in cash before. I was like, "Ooh, wow." And fortunately, SEC, you can the financial SEC regulators, you can make sure you hear this note too. I gave him his money back. I did not invest or trade his money because I knew that one day that one, you want to be fully focused before you take on any opportunity like that. So I've always lended a guiding ear and a safe space to talk about money with my teammates, but yeah, I remember when he came in, threw me 20 grand, and I was like, wow, you believe in me more than I believe in me right now. Wow, this is pretty funny.
The most unbelievable thing about that is having to go back, tail between your legs, and be like, all right, I got to give you your 20 grand back. Like this isn't
Yeah,
how this
yeah,
works. We can't do it this way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You're lucky they didn't cut me. Yeah, I was in between cuts at that point. If they would have cut me, I might have had to run off with his. No, I'm joking.
Like that's rent for the next like 3 months. We're good. We'll take care of that. This
Right.
has been great. I want to get you out of here with a little bit of rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work for you?
Let's do it.
All right. What's an NIL deal that every college athlete should reject?
Ooh, reject.
You thought I was going to say accept, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You said rapid fire. I gotta get you something quick. That's tough.
All right. How about a suggestion for
Oh,
you? The
yeah, let me
correct
go.
the correct answer to the question is just anything that pays in crypto. That's it, right?
No. I like that. I like that. I was really gonna think of something like a whole topic of not to touch, right? But hey, I like that one. I will tell you this though. You can do an NIL deal with a financial firm, just don't push any financial products
Mm.
or securities, right? Like don't say invest in this company or invest in this or invest in that, because what we saw with the crypto craze is unfortunately when those companies, if they ever go bad or ever have any heat in the news, the athletes or the ambassadors that push them end up getting uh, caught in the crossfire as well too sometimes. So
Okay, that's a good answer. That's still I think good advice for anybody.
yeah.
Okay, speaking of advice, what's the piece of advice that you give every blue chip recruit that's about to get NIL money kind of just thrown at their face?
Mm, one, don't sell your soul. All money ain't good money. And you wanted one piece of advice. So I'll give you, don't sell your soul. All money ain't good money. Just think about 5, 10 years from now, whatever that is. Are you, is the older version of yourself proud that you accepted that? Right. And it could be. Doesn't mean it's negative. Just making sure that all money ain't good money. A lot of some of these companies And some of these people, they hand you money and they think they own you and all parts of you for the rest of your life. And that's not necessarily the case here.
Okay, so a guy who didn't get NIL money, but may or may not have, but definitely did get actual money. Cam Newton, you spent a little bit of time with him at the Patriots. Tell me, please, and I know it was COVID, it
Yeah.
was 2020, but it's, you just never know. Did you at least get to go out with him one time?
No. Oh man, no. I would have loved to though. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would have loved to, but not. Yeah, no. Because of the COVID season, everything was on lockdown, and unfortunately, he was the first one on our team that got COVID.
Yeah,
Right?
I remember. Yeah.
He was the first one on our team that got COVID. We had to fly out and play the Chiefs. I think on a Tuesday. I want to say it was a weird. It was the first time in the NFL I ever flew out the same day and played a game. So I remember that whole ordeal. But no, didn't get a chance to go out with Cam. Still available though, Cam. Call you, boy. Call you, boy.
Cam's got time. He can do it now. Yeah, make that happen. Okay, how much leverage does Caleb Williams have to come back to USC and maybe get a monstrous NIL deal for like $15 million or something if he doesn't like, as his dad was talking about, the team that's picking at number one? And what like is $15 million like is that a crazy number to think about for one season of a guy who's obviously going to be considered the best player in college football coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the cool thing about NIL is he does have leverage, right? He does have leverage, and for the first time ever, he actually can delay. It used to be I need to go to the league so that I could get paid, right? And now it's like, all right, I can chill out here till it's the better situation for me, so to speak. And so I think he definitely has leverage. He clearly does, and I think that there'd be a lot of people who'd be willing to try to find ways to help him market around USC's campus in order to stay there.
Last one for you. Dumbest financial purchase you have ever made was what?
Oh man, um, it's clothes. I go through fads of different clothes. So I had a dad hat phase. Um, I had a skinny jean phase. I had a jewelry phase. And my jewelry is like Amazon jewelry, right? The most expensive watch I got is an Apple Watch. So you don't hurt me too much. But ultimately, the biggest thing, I told before we started recording here, we just moved homes and stuff like that, and going through our old home and going through all the clothes and just looking at yourself like, what was I thinking? That's probably the dumbest purchase.
It's always close. Nobody ever feels good about looking back at clothes they bought 10 years ago, which is just so weird. There's very rarely a great financial purchase when it comes to clothes. That's so yeah, very fitting. Brandon, excited to see what athletes.org is going to be able to do in this very ever-changing space. Really appreciate the time, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.